walks in to a therapy clinic claiming, "We have communication problems." I surprise them by saying, "You're probably talking too much." Welcome back to the Rethink podcast, where we take any idea, any controversy, any topic, and we look at it and examine it through the relationship intelligence lens. When you come to Rethink, you found a place where we can pause, reflect, and explore about the different ways that human beings connect and disconnect. It seems very natural that we can disconnect, but the ability to reconnect, that's an art form. Today's episode is about what I call the broken X syndrome. Hi, I'm Dr. David Zierk, and I'm here to talk about something that a lot of people don't really understand what's going on. In difficult situations, when conflict arises between two people, the problem is what's happening below the surface. It's invisible. It's not readily apparent to the naked eye, but it's there and it's felt. This is the reason why I call this episode the broken X syndrome. So I'm going to go to my iPad. I'm going to draw an axis, straight line, with another straight line. So we have an X and a Y axis, one horizontal and one vertical. And we're going to start off with the horizontal one, and we're going to call that the X axis. Then we have the Y axis, and to make it even more interesting, we have a third and final axis called the Z axis. Let's focus on the first one, the X axis. This has to do with something that's absolutely critically important in every relationship, including what goes on in therapy. And that's when people come to a therapist and say, "You know what, we're not getting along. It's not the same. Things are harder than they ever have been." Instead of jumping into skills, instead of telling them what to do, or even before exploring the depths of everyone's history, we need to pause for a moment and really reflect on everyone's capacity. So X stands for capacity. The capacity for insight and empathy. Capacity for insight and empathy. Let's take the first one, insight. The ability to look inside, to be aware of what's going on. Maybe the past has revisited you and you're not aware of it, but you're feeling off balance. Maybe you're overreacting to something that, in hindsight, you begin realizing, I'm not sure what that was all about. That's when the past, your past, has caught up with you. You've heard the phrase of being triggered. Being triggered means a piece or a part of your past has gone tumbling back into the now to remind you that you didn't like it then, you still don't like it now. During those such moments, you're going to experience kind of emotional turmoil. Your thinking is going to be all over the place. You might even begin having bodily sensations that are really uncomfortable. In any case, you're feeling off balance. Those are the times to begin to pause, look inside, and ask yourself, what do I need to do? Do I need to go get a drink of water? Do I need about 10, 20 minutes to just kind of relax a little bit, settle, so I can step back into this conversation and perhaps try to make sense out of what just happened? The ability to stop, pause, and reflect sounds really easy when we put it on paper, but in real time, when it's really needed, a lot of people pass over that concept of insight. This is where good therapy comes into play. Hey, what just happened? The therapist says to the client, causing the client to pause, reflect, and ask themselves, what did just happen? When they do that, they're looking back inside of themselves. Something happened out in their outside world to trigger their inside world. And the inside world is a composite of what's happened in the past, what's happening right here and now in the situation, and what we imagine might happen next. Oftentimes we call that anxiety. So we check for capacity for insight. But that's not enough. In relationship intelligence, trying to turn conflict into connection, another critical component is needed. It's called empathy, kind of a superpower. Empathy is the ability to not look inside, but look inside the other person. That's why these companion pieces belong together, looking inside yourself, insight, looking inside the other person. That's empathy. And when you do empathize in real time, when it's really needed, that's the bridge that connects you with the other person. And you give them a gift that they can't give themselves. They feel felt. Feeling felt means that now the heaviness that they're experiencing is shared. The burden of their heaviness is shared. That's the power of empathy. It doesn't make the problem go away. It just makes it more tolerable. So we have this concept of the broken X syndrome. When a person's insight isn't online, when their empathy is not immediately available to them, their X breaks. It's during those moments without sufficient insight, without sufficient empathy, that the connection becomes a disconnection that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Realizing when we're having a broken X moment is really critical to make sure that things don't go from bad to worse and worse to ugly. I had a couple ones who loved this concept of the broken X, and they had strong religious convictions. And they came back after one of our sessions talking about the broken X, and they said, David, you said to us that people who are attracted to each other have an automatic connection, a plus sign. Got chemical romance, just that sense of being dazzled by each other, a deep organic connection. We belong together for whatever reason. But when that connection turns into a disconnection, it goes to the X that you mentioned. We call that a tilted cross. And so to be playful with those moments that feel anything but playful, they say, hey, our cross just broke. And what they're doing is you're giving to each other the gift of pausing, and we're giving them an opportunity to reflect individually from an insight perspective. What's my contribution to this? And they're also beginning to think about what the other person needs and what's going on within the other person. It's one thing to look inside self. It's another thing to look inside other. Those kinds of critical moments is how we go from a disconnection and we begin moving back towards a reconnection. Pretty powerful. Let's go back to the model for a moment, because we spent some time talking about the X-axis, but I promised you two more. From X to Y, the Y-axis has to do with skills. It's what people do. Now, my experience in therapy is that people come to a therapist because they're in trouble, they're off balance, they're not feeling good about self or others or the world. Their confidence is lost, and they're just kind of in a haze. And at the beginning stages of my career as a psychologist, my training taught me to step in and help people to become very action-oriented, to help people understand what they need to do. But remember, X comes first. When you step into Y without exploring X, things don't go well. For instance, in a typical situation, person to person, one person is having a difficult day again, and the other person, perhaps intending to be helpful, says, oh my gosh, what's going on? Can't you just get over it? That phrase of getting over it is a skill. I'm not saying it's a favorable skill, a healthy skill, but it's a skill. That one person's telling the other person what to do. Now, you and I both know where that lands. It lands in a really negative place for the person receiving that. But the skills are important. but only when that X has been strengthened, empowered. A person brings insight and empathy to that situation, and with that foundational strength, they move towards skills. And I want to give you 3 skills to know and to practice during times of conflict. I call them the top 3 skills, top 3 living skills. Number 1 is learning how to stand up for yourself without putting the other person down. That just sounds so easy breezy when we say it, but let me repeat it. Standing up for yourself without putting the other person down. One of the things that's the easiest thing to do is to put the other person down, to blame them, to say, get over it. And you and I both know that that doesn't improve that disconnection. In fact, the abyss happening between 2 people oftentimes gets bigger and bigger. So learning how to stand up for yourself without putting the other person down. Hey, I'm not feeling very good right now. Are you? You led with how you were feeling. And then you invited the other person into that conversation as well. But you stood up for yourself without putting anyone else down. Self-advocacy, I think, is the number 1 relationship repair skill. Remember, though, it comes with a challenge. Learning how to stand up for yourself without putting the other person down. The easiest way to practice this is to realize that the fastest way to put the other person down is to go to a place of judgment. The opposite of judgment is learning. So when you stand up for yourself without putting the other person down, it sounds like, you know what, I'm not in a really good place. Are you? I just went to a learning place. That's skill number 1. Skill number 2. Deal with the situation without making it bigger than it already is. Again, as I say it out loud, it sounds like triteness. Deal with the situation without making it bigger than it already is. But when you begin to realize that the power of that life skill, you begin understanding that beyond the pause of insight and empathy, you then do an assessment and saying, how big is this problem? What do I need to do about this situation, this issue at this particular time, without making it bigger, without making it worse, without things falling apart? So dealing with the situation without making it bigger than it already is follows the idea of standing up for yourself without putting the other person down. I promised you a 3rd life skill, and that has to do with knowing how your behavior is impacting the other person in real time when it's really needed. That's a level of self-awareness that's really critical in moments of conflict. Now, that is related to empathy, but very adjacently. Being aware of how your behavior is impacting other people, whether it's nonverbal behavior like crossing your arms, or maybe a little bit of tone of voice is being thrown in for good measure. Being more aware of how your behavior is impacting the other person allows you then to do a recorrect. A relationship-enhanced correction in real time. I don't know what just happened. Tone of voice that came out of my mouth, I'm not sure where that belongs, but you didn't deserve that. Let's start over again. What I really meant to say was, and then you tempered your tone of voice, but you only did that through a sense of self-awareness. What are you aware of? How your behavior impacts the other person. Now you'll see, because I have handouts in my website at davidzierk.com, there's other life skills. But these first 3 are really critical to know and to practice and to even ask for feedback. When you stand up for yourself without putting the other person down, see how it went, ask for how it went. When you deal with a situation without making it bigger than it already is, it's a great time to ask yourself, how did I handle that? How did I navigate that really difficult moment? Ask for feedback. The idea of knowing how your behavior impacts other people, ask for feedback. We've kind of covered axis Y, so let's move on to axis Z. This is a really important one as well. It has to do with willingness. To what extent am I willing to do what needs to be done when it really needs to be done? And am I aware of that moment? So you can see willingness or willpower is it's the action piece to it all. It's the energy piece of it. So we have energy in Z, we have the action in Y, and we have capacity in X. When X, Y, Z come together, now all of a sudden, we have things that are moving in a really positive, corrective experience direction, and it allows us to turn conflict into connection. And that's exactly what relationship intelligence is all about. Being aware when disconnection occurs, that's what I call a broken X moment. When you have mastered the art of disconnecting by being really low in insight and thinking that empathy is very optional in relationships, you might reach the criteria, and a person might say you have broken X syndrome. That's a fun phrase, if you will, of saying, what do I need to do about that? X, Y, Z. It starts with X. It starts with insight, followed by empathy. One leads to the next. So it does start with insight. It does start in terms of looking inside. And by doing so, this is going to effectively improve your capacity for leadership. It's going to massively improve your ability to turn conflict into connection. It's going to boost your confidence in terms of handling even some of the most difficult interpersonal moments that you've experienced. So here's my call to action. When you're having a moment where you're feeling off balance and a disconnect occurs, I want you to really tune into that. And here's how you can tune into it. A lot of people aren't even aware that a disconnection occurs. So let's have fun with this for just a moment. In the world of golf, there is a manufacturer called Ping. It's named that because when the ball hits the club perfectly, you hear that wonderful sound, ping. Borrowing from that, I started thinking, what does it sound like? If that's what a connection sounds like, what does a disconnection sound like? And so I said, zing. When those moments occur, when you feel disconnected and emotions pour in, your thoughts become really scrambled, you begin to experience bodily sensations that are really unpleasant, uncomfortable, and unwanted, that's a moment of zing. Just that little playful phrase is enough to be able to say, what just happened? Zing. Now, that doesn't empower you to blame the other person for that. Remember, you have a part in every disconnection. There's always a mutual process here. Zing. A nice way to understand that a disconnection occurs. So my call to action for you is to become more aware of when a disconnection occurs, and then going to a place of pause. And when you're pausing, your mind then is given permission to go into two different directions. One, to begin asking what's going on inside of me, what's going on inside of the other person. And when you put and you empower the X, you begin realizing that not only are you feeling empowered, but the reconnection that occurs strengthens and emboldens the relationship. And that's the reason why relationship intelligence is taglined, turning conflict into connection. It's really believed in the Relationship Intelligence Clinic that we only really get to know each other through moments of conflict, and we turn that into a connection. And you might ask yourself, how is that possible? Because one of the things I want to share with you about that phrase, turning conflict into connection, is realizing that under every conflict is an unmet need. Under every conflict, there's an unmet need, each and every time. So when you're feeling disconnected because of conflict that occurs, and you hear that zing in your ear, then one great way to step back into that moment is by asking the other person, hey, I'm not sure what just happened, but what do you need right now? Just by asking what the other person needs, you're demonstrating insight that you took part in that disconnection. You're demonstrating a capacity for some level of empathy because you feel something that's not quite right in them. And you're asking them a very important question. What is it they need? In doing that, you're neutralizing conflict. What do you need from me right now? What am I not getting that you need? It softens the moment. It neutralizes the entanglement of the moment. And it creates an opportunity for reconnection. Certainly doesn't promise it, because the other person has to kind of play along, if you will. They have to appreciate where you're coming from, really experience your authenticity, trust your motives. And if you pass that test, then they'll step back into the situation with their native skills and also contribute to that reconnection. So that's what the broken X syndrome is all about. Understanding the broken X, we're connected till we're not connected. And during those moments of X, we're disconnected. Knowing how to reconnect is empowered through insight and empathy. I hope you enjoyed today's episode about the broken X syndrome. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Rethink podcast, where we think with connection in mind. I encourage you to visit my website at davidzierk.com for more information about this particular topic and many, many more. There's handouts, there's quizzes to take, and I look forward to you tuning into the next episode. Thank you very much.